Let's start with a question. What if your company's biggest strength, that super efficient global supply chain you've built, was actually its greatest weakness? We're about to dive into a huge, often invisible risk that a ton of businesses are facing right now, and what it really takes to spot it before it's way too late. This quote from Subhankar Bandyopadhyay, it just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? It's such a perfect way to think about proactive governance. I mean, waiting for a crisis to show you where you're vulnerable, that's a game you're always going to lose. The real work happens before there's even a spark. And that brings us to this core idea, the governance blind spot. So just imagine you're on a board, you're looking at the supply chain numbers, and everything looks great. It's lean, it's cost-effective, but what you don't see, what's hidden under the surface, is a massive strategic risk, maybe one single point of failure that could bring the whole thing to a grinding halt. It's that classic problem of efficiency looking great on paper, but being incredibly fragile in reality. Okay, so the big question is, how do you spot this risk before disaster strikes? Well, to figure that out, we're going to look at the story of one leader who has spent his career not just pointing out this blind spot, but actually building the solution from the ground up. And that leader is Subhankar Bandyopadhyay. With more than 20 years of experience that stretches from government research to Fortune 500 strategy, and now to being an entrepreneur, his journey is like a perfect blueprint for how to de-risk a modern supply chain, especially in a world as complex as aerospace. To really get what he's doing now, we have to go back. We need to see how he built his strategic toolkit. And this wasn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. We're talking about a 14-year-long proving ground at a global giant, Honeywell. For 14 years, he wasn't just pushing paper. He was in the trenches, forging a set of skills that were battle-tested, skills for solving huge, messy problems. He was building the playbooks to see what was around the corner and then actually execute a plan. And you know what? The results really do speak for themselves. And this isn't just theory. We're talking about direct P&L ownership of portfolios worth around $100 million. We're talking about being handed the keys to turn around global sales campaigns and delivering an incredible 208% revenue growth. And then, on top of that, driving operational excellence for a 20% improvement in getting products launched on time. These numbers tell a story, and that story is all about execution. So how did he get those numbers? Well, it all comes down to the specific toolkit. And what's so cool here is you can see how it all fits together. You've got the high-level stuff like go-to-market strategy, but then it goes right down into the nitty-gritty of data analytics and making sure different teams can actually work together. This is the machinery that turns a vision into reality. So, you've got this powerful toolkit forged at one of the biggest companies in the world. What do you do with it? Well, he took all that experience and aimed it at something bigger than just corporate success. He aimed it at a national mission, building a more self-reliant industrial ecosystem in India. And that's how Strap Aerospace came to be. But look, this is not just another consulting firm. It's the active, hands-on solution to that governance blind spot we mentioned at the start. You could say it's the fire extinguisher company, right? It's designed to build that resilience before the fire starts. And their method is super clear. First, consultation. They dive in and figure out what the real problem is. Second, collaboration, because you have to work with both industry and government to get anything done. And third, and this is probably the most important part, capability building. It's all about creating teams that can keep this resilience going for the long haul. I think this slide just nails the shift in thinking he's pushing for. It's about getting away from this fragile model of being over-reliant on global partners and moving towards a smarter, strategic self-reliance. It's about turning those hidden risks into strengths you can actually see and manage. And it's realizing that real security doesn't just come from being efficient, it comes from being capable. Okay, so you have all this deep operational know-how. But how do you make that useful at the highest level, in the boardroom? Well, that's where his role as a certified independent director becomes such a game changer. The key word here is translates. Lots of people have experience, but a truly effective board member can take that gritty, in-the-trenches knowledge and translate it into strategic foresight. They're the ones who can connect the dots between what's happening on the factory floor and the big risks and opportunities the entire company is facing. Now, what's really fascinating here is how this table maps his value directly to the actual language of a board. So when the board is talking about risk oversight, he's not just giving an opinion. He's bringing foresight that's been proven by owning a P&L. When they talk strategy, he brings real-world go-to-market savvy. He's the bridge between the board's big goals and the messy reality of actually making them happen. All right, let's start to pull all of this together. When you look at his journey from corporate strategist to entrepreneur to board director, it gives us a really powerful lesson in rethinking what resilience actually means for a business today. So what are the big takeaways here? First, your biggest weaknesses are probably hiding in plain sight, disguised as something that looks efficient. Second, real resilience? It isn't just a line item in a budget. It's something you have to build from the ground up with real capabilities and smart self-reliance. And finally, you need leaders who can bridge that gap, people who can speak the language of the boardroom and the factory floor. And all of this leaves every leader out there with one last, pretty critical question to think about. I want you to look at your own organization, your own supply chain, and ask yourself, honestly, is it built just for short-term efficiency, or is it actually built for long-term survival?